Well, what about going to the valley of my childhood and having that valley view of growing up from that valley? Since as an adult now, I can claim to have a mountain view, you know. I think I can claim that given the experience, given the introspective, the investigation I've done of who I am and what I want to become. And the childhood book in this chapter, the fourth chapter of my childhood that I'm sharing with you, is a vulnerable one too, because I think one of the things I've noticed as a person is that I've developed a paradox of how I look at things. There's tension when it comes to certain components of my life that affect me at a deeper level: my belief system, my value system, my view of people, the universe, the ecosystem in general, the animate and the inanimate. And that tension, I think, is a good tension that I wrestle with every day. It's grounded me, given me a foundation, a sense of a place I can stand and have that mountain view in comparison to the child view that I'll share slightly. I think the point of my sharing today has to do with the tension I've developed looking back, of the tension I have with religion, the institutionalized form of religion that informs me a lot about misconceptions, misrepresentations, that either plague me or make me appreciate certain things in a deeper way, or even in a way that I have to shade off some of the beliefs. Let me go back. This tension, I think, is created by the environment that I grew up in. In 1974 in particular, something is happening in my life that I'll delve in shortly. But let me talk about the God that I believe in. Okay, I'm just openly going to start by that big bang of God. People struggle saying it. I don't. People reject maybe the Bible. I don't. I think the Bible, the paradoxes, the literature, the poetry, the dual directionality of the Bible, where it looks back and looks forward and even addresses the present, I think is a literature, is a book worth investigating with an open mind, which I've done many times. And I think sometimes I run into people who dismiss the Bible without even reading it. It's like generalizing people. It's like stereotyping anything. You can stereotype anything and you feel good about it because you say something. Oh, God is dead. Is he? Is he dead? It sounds good to say it. It sounds good to even be a basher of any form of religion, any form of anything. It's very good to bash anything because it makes you feel good. But for me, this is where I'm going to go to the God. Because I think I'll take a reverent approach, a very humble approach. I'm not preaching, I'm talking about myself. I'm not here to sway people one or another. But for me, that tension of a God that is above the fray of politics, tribalism, the isms, is this God. The God who took a risk to rapture. I think I've shared this word, rapture, a lot. Rapturing is taking a risk to let go of some of you, some parts of you, so to speak, so that somebody else will get a sense of dignity and being. God is the initiator, is the genesis, so to speak. Is the genesis of that in the fact that I think there's a boardroom. It's written in the book of Genesis, where it's very, to me, very sobering. Um, where God says this, I'm paraphrasing, I'll read it for you. Let's make human beings in our image. In the image of God, human beings were created. So here is an entity that is supreme to me, and take that risk of saying, oh, let's make another one that has this image. Some people can take it very far and say they are gods now. I'm not a god. But that beginning, that genesis, that conceptualized idea, that risk, that uninhabited section of human beings, of humanity, personally, is noble. It's quite ideal. It's supreme. It's full of love. You know, I can imagine a couple saying, let's have a baby in our own image, because that's the only way you can have it. But we are talking about something else here, something about the beginnings. And there is a voice. That's the first voice of beginnings. But don't get stuck there. For me, I didn't get stuck there. I find another voice a few maybe years later, centuries later, comes in and casts doubt to these beginnings. Did God say? Do you trust God? Second voice. Ha! What happens after that voice says there's a mistrust planted. There's fear in the universe. People are running behind bushes and hiding from this God of rapture, who has said, let's make people in my image. Somebody else comes and says, oh, you can't trust him, but you can trust me, he hisses. We can fast forward this very fast. Let's just run around with it. The one who was made in the image of God decided to create an institution that represent that God of Genesis. How has he done that? And that's where I come in my childhood. I remember, I'll go back to 1974, where I went to predominantly Catholic school in Nyandarua, Kipipiri, central part of Kenya. And the Catholics have their rituals, they have their tenets, they have their habits, they have a way of making God a reality to you, so to speak. So there's prayers, there's rosary prayers, very popular among Catholics, where you do this and you have beads and all that. I wasn't Catholic, but that was the closest primary school I could go to. And these ways get interesting for me, because if you are coming from Adventist, we have our own tenets. I'll talk about it after this. Pay attention now. Slow down. So yeah, so I went to this Catholic school, and one of the things I remember vividly, I was 6, I think I was 6, 5, is you had to master, you have to recite precisely the Rosary Prayer. It's a requirement, it's part of being Catholic. And so during the morning parades, so morning parades where you line up, they find out who is late, who is tidy, who hasn't cut his hair, dirty uniform, they go checking the color of your shirt. Some people even check your knees, whether you wash them, the back of your ears. People sticking their sticks there, it's dirty, it's dirty. Sometimes these guys were just brutal, man. They would check the back of their ear, they're like, you're dirty, and they're using a stick, not a finger, a stick. Some people be bleeding when you're doing that. I mean, trust me, the colonials left that legacy. And the black Africans, Kenyans, used it, because colonials used to do that, where they're using sticks to check whether black people are dirty by using sticks. And women were the worst, and I don't want to talk about it here. But anyway, let's go to the religious component and how this works out in that parade. So during the parade, there's a moment of saying, Maria naretwaraide, naretwaraide, mwadane, na 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 na. There's a chanting. There's a little bit of a chanting, starts slow, then of course, there's a crescendo, so to speak. There's these people feel in touch with that God. I'm a kid. I'm an Adventist. I don't know what's going on, but I'm here and I'm supposed to know it. I should have been practicing it. I'm not. I'm not in touch. I'm just looking around. What's going on? A teacher was spying on me. The Gestapo of God was looking. I think it was the headmaster. I don't remember. The headmaster, the head. Man, the next thing I know is my pants and my shorts were wet. He had come behind me, took me by my ears, pulled me, ripped my ears apart. I had peed in terror, fear that I wasn't a godly boy. Ha! That's the God of human beings, man. That's me. Um, I remember just shaking. I didn't want to show how terrified I was, but tears are there, peas there, pants are wet, shorts. It's early in the morning. It's cold. Now I'm really cold. Um, did it make me appreciate the rosary and the prayer and this God that's supposed to be hearing me, so to speak? I don't know. I don't know, because the rest of the day I couldn't change my shorts. I sat in some wet pants, baptized by the rosary prayer. I can laugh at it right now, because that's the tension I've had with religious or institutions of religion, where people make God to be feared. Do you remember the second voice? Somebody came and said, "Do you trust God?" I lost trust right there, right? How do you have trust? How is this God gonna be represented to you? How is this God coming to me as a young kid that you have to do the right thing? Otherwise, you're gonna pee in your pants in terror and fear. Well, that is at my very young age, tender age, with the Catholics and the place that was. And listen, I'm not, like bashing Catholics. I'm saying that is a human component and the human thinking of God, which is twisted. It is, it's misrepresenting God at the high, in the highest order. And so that was it for me. Let me fast forward to 1979. I went to another school that was in Eldama Ravine, somewhere in Kenya. And there's a church component to it. There's a connection to the church. I think it was the Anglican Church, AIC. Yeah, there's some rituals. You're supposed to do certain things. There are these tenets of belonging to this institution. And they are just hitting me the wrong way, so to speak, because they are very rigid, very orthodox in nature, very punitive in the ones who fail. So that, at this point of my life, I can talk about it, but I'm talking from my child valley view, not mountain view. That experience kind of maims me, scars me. Let me go to the Adventist. So a few years later, I went to a boarding school, an academy, Kamagambo in particular, where the rigidity, the orthodoxy, the traditions are still stringent. This is my church that my dad poured his life, his legacy. As I have talked about it, how he went to school, he was a preacher, he was never home. So I went to this institution that claim to this day that they're the remnant. They're the exception. Everybody claims to be a remnant. Everybody claims to have the monopoly of the truth. So they do Adventist. One of the things that speaks to me volumes in that environment of learning was in the early stages, the elective courses, the early entry-level classes you take is pretty much religious. CRE is a Christian religious education. Is that what it is? Yeah, something like CRE. Those who know it know what I'm talking about. I think they still teach it because I think Kenya and even America and other countries, they believe they are a Christian nation. I don't know how that works. How does that look when somebody is looking at what I'm looking at? Well, that's what they say. That's what Americans say. That's what Kenyans say, and other countries. So in Kamagambo, one of the things I remember very interestingly, the diet. The diet was predominantly vegetarian. I guess I'm still vegetarian. Maybe that's where I find it. But I think science too and the information has made me appreciate vegetarian lifestyle more. There was no meat. Um, Yet, can I say this? Teachers and faculty were known to be eating meat. I think the best thing we ate was an egg. We had big old poultry farm in Kamagambo. But let me go to church. Let me go to that religious part of the school. Um, we had Gestapos. I mean, every institution, every cult, every institution that claims as a god, for some reason they struggle to use um, patient methods. There's one thing I've come to see about religious cult institutions. They use predominantly fear. They use fear, rigidity, orthodoxy, impatience, and just condemnation. They are very good at that. They've mastered those ingredients. Those are the top ingredients when it comes to those institutions. Fear is a big one. One of the things I remember clearly for me is going to church. There's gatekeepers. They are standing on the side of the church, the gate or the door, and they are checking whether you're well dressed, you have a Bible, you have a hymn book, and quarterly. Otherwise, you are excluded. I don't know whether inside that building was heaven or paradise, but this idea again is just what it was. There's this idea that you have to fit a certain, you have to measure up to get in. And by the way, it's not just in the religious world. There's gated communities. Blacks are not supposed to go there. If you are poor, you don't have certain income. So these isms, is not just exclusively in the religious institutions. So don't even start saying you haven't seen it. Okay, I've seen this everywhere. There's some clubs you can't go to in Kenya. Muthaiga, they were sued in Kenya for not allowing blacks. And this is Kenya, by the way. I think you have a certain income to go in there. So we have some beaches in Kenya that don't allow even black people to this day. When white people go there, they get a free pass. People smile when they see white people. So listen, I'm exposing something. I'm exposing the fallacy. I'm exposing the ludicrousness and the repugnance of some things. So that's my childhood. I went to this institution and I see this, and I'm still trying to say that that view, that representation of God is miscued, is so human, is so limited, is so condemning, it only instills more fear. And for me, I remember that almost vividly. I think one of the things that I was inducted or indoctrinated into Adventist movement was in 1977. I was in Kitale, Matunda, Capture Up. We had gone for a youth crusade, a 2 weeks youth crusade. And I remember Pastor Momja, he's a legend preacher. I think he's a modern day John the Baptist, who preached really with power. He preached a lot of, he was adamant Jesus was coming today. And I think Adventists have done incredible work in recruiting people using that narrative, that end time, Jesus is coming. And back then, 1977, I got baptized after being stirred up into the idea that the God of this institution that has said fear, you're going to be judged, you're going to end up in this and that, pushed me to say, hey, how can I be saved? And I'm not condemning, I'm just saying fear isn't sustainable. I'm just trying to come strongly on that point. Hopefully you get it. But I'm speaking as a child. I was a young person. And so, yeah, I got baptized in 1977 in a river up there in Capture Up by Pastor Songok, who was a legend pastor, a great friend of my dad. He was older, bearded guy. He was a modern day Abraham. Okay. He was a soft-spoken man, but he has a deep voice. Let me tell you why I talk of his deep voice, because I have very good memories too that when he used to visit our house frequently, which to my dislike, is because when he came, we knew we couldn't sleep because this dude, this pastor, could snore the neighborhood into vigilante. Okay, no pun intended. This Pastor Songo guy, when he came to our house, you thought we were in a jungle and the lion had just taken over the building. And yes, may he rest in peace. But he baptized me in Capture Up. For me, it was fortunate baptism because I was told later there was drama unfolding out of sight for me. I didn't know what was going on. There's a man who had thought that I didn't meet the threshold to be baptized. I had some sins hanging on my head. So he wanted to come and pull me out of the river so that I don't get contaminated River Jordan of cleansing the sinners, which I find kind of ironic and almost comical because if baptism was anything that Christians know is for cleansing, is you're kind of saying, hey, I'm done being this, I want to be different. So it's a kind of a transitional public declaration of your faith. And I don't know who hasn't seen, but go ahead. Yeah, he's the church elder, Mr. Musa Arap Meto. I remember him. They were good friends of ours back in the days, and I hope I think the wife is still around. He passed away. Yeah, he had gathered the troops to come and pull me out of the river, and so that I don't sink. I'm laughing because I'm at the mountain view of my life, and that valley view of a child sometimes can be traumatizing. But I can laugh it off right now because, yeah, I got baptized. I got my certificate of baptism. Now I can enter the kingdom. But I was entering an institution that I'm still wrestling with to understand what they stand for. So, yeah, that is the tension I'm trying to wrestle with. And I can say from the beginning, for me, that high paradise view, that mountain view of a God who raptured to create me and give me this platform is the one I look back and I look up. Because human beings, if I was to look at people in the valley, so to speak, that valley view is so twisted. It's twisted, is short-sighted, it's very condemning, it's fearful, it's not liberating. And I'm glad I can speak with a liberated voice because I think the first voice of rapturing is the voice I want to stick with. For me, I'm speaking about myself. I don't know what you stand for. There's a second voice that I kind of place in its place, is a voice that instills fear. And I think people have ran away with fear to try to think it motivates people. It might motivate people, but for a short time. I think love truly casts out fear. I didn't make that up. It's in the book. Because for me, any form of violence, any form of fear, any form of violence to me is anti-God. Period. Because the same God gave in to fear. He succumbed to the highest form of fear. And for me, when people say God is a God who's going to be mashing people, wrath, God of wrath, that's not the God I know. And maybe I'm speaking as an adult, and I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just speaking for myself. I think that first voice, there's a second voice, there's a human voice. I'll go to the first one. In the beginning. It's me talking about my life. I hope I didn't scare you, did I? No, I didn't. Talk to you later. That was my chapter 4 of my life. I was young. I was in the valley as a child. Now I'm at the mountain view and I can see it's not that bad.